everybody. I'm Evie Roberts, and this is my podcast, Talking in the Dark. Welcome. The aim of this podcast is to raise awareness about blindness, visual impairment, and disability in general, in a happy and light-hearted way. For those of you that don't know, I am blind. I was born with a condition called bilateral anophthalmia. Try spelling that one. It basically means that when I was born, my eyes didn't develop properly, so I wear prosthetics instead. The goal of this podcast is to remove some of the stigma and stereotypes around disabilities, whilst also having fun at the same time. Each week, I will be interviewing people from all walks of life, including some with hidden or physical disabilities like mine, and getting to know a little bit more about them and the lives they lead. In this episode, I am very excited to tell you that I will be talking to theatre and radio director and arts consultant, Nickie Miles Wildin. My name is Evie Roberts, and this is my podcast, Talking in the Dark. Welcome. Hi Nickie, how are you doing?
Good, thanks, Evie. Lovely to meet you.
It's so lovely to meet you too, and it's such an honour to get to speak to you today. How's your day going so far?
Yeah, my day is an okay day actually for a Wednesday. The sun is shining in Manchester. I've been meeting lots of fantastic artists. I've been to a fantastic venue in Manchester called Z Arts, which is a centre for children and young people, seen their library space, which is just really magical, which has been designed by young people and children. So yeah, it feels a good day. How's your day going?
Well, oh yeah, I mean, it's going good. I mean, first of all, that sounds like a very exciting day. But yeah, my day's going good. Just been in school, going to lessons as usual, but they've gone quite well today, actually. And I've had some lessons that I enjoy. Like I had music today, and I really enjoy music, so that was good. But yeah, it sounds like you've had a very exciting day then.
Yeah, it's been a good day. I think it's the day when I can go and meet different artists and see different spaces and talk about projects that potentially coming up, things I want to make. That's when I feel I feel like today's been a creative day.
We love that. We really love that. Now, to begin with, I know that, like me, you have a disability. So could you tell me a little bit about your disability?
Yeah, of course. So I became disabled at the age of 3.5. I am a part-time wheelchair user. I get around most of the time using my power chair. And my impairment is that I have juvenile chronic arthritis, or juvenile idiopathic arthritis is what it's called now.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, how does that? I mean, you've mentioned that you use a powered wheelchair some of the time, and that helps you get around. But obviously, how does your impairment kind of affect you?
I think it's that thing, isn't it, where you having lived with it for so long, it becomes just part of your everyday life, and I think my impairment doesn't affect me as much as the kind of physical and attitudinal barriers that society places on me. That's the biggest thing that kind of frustrates me, is that, as a wheelchair user, what are we in 2024, and there are still places, venues, public transport that I can't access as a wheelchair user. And it's those things that frustrate me more than my own impairment. It's those kind of barriers that society is placing around that, I'm sure you probably find this, that adds to our frustrations. We can't access the world in the same way our non-disabled peers or friends can. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I really couldn't agree with you more there. I mean, first of all, like you say, yeah, I think if you've had your disability from a young age, it really does help. Like I've been visually impaired since I was born, and I think it really does help because you kind of don't know or can't remember a world where you weren't disabled. And so I think
Mhm.
that helps. But yes, I mean, one of the things that I was taught actually on the podcast, and one of the things that I really like to bring up with my guests, and it feels very relevant here, is the social model of disability.
Yeah,
And that, for any of my listeners who don't know, it's basically that to kind of put it into terms that it's not your disability per se that makes you disabled. It's society and the lack of accessibility that makes you more disabled than your actual disability. And I really couldn't agree with you more there. I think that if society was a little bit more accessible, I think you'd find that some disabilities sort of affect people less because there aren't so many accessibility barriers.
yeah, completely. And and it's funny, isn't it? It's like I didn't learn about the social model until I was 21. And I think that's that thing that you grow up then thinking that you are the problem. But once I discovered the social model, it was completely like absolute epiphany moment for me of just realizing how I'm not the problem, actually. It's this world in which I'm living and how it's made. And I think that, as a disabled person, you can then go, yeah, it's not me. I can fight more about kind of inequality and injustice because I'm in a world where people keep creating these barriers and they shouldn't, and we should be looking at how we can get rid of those barriers. But also, and I don't know about you, Evie, and this is something that conversations with some disabled friends as well, of just going, as disabled people, we are the future, because everyone is going to become disabled at some point in their lives, whether that's through old age or an accident or an illness. And therefore, we've kind of already beat people to it. And things that we're having to kind of make those adaptations along the way, that as people become disabled, they will thank us because we've got those things in place already. We're leading the game, Evie. Like everyone else just gotta play catch up. Um, and without disabled people, we wouldn't have so many ramps. We wouldn't have, access to audiobooks. Those audiobooks came about kind of originally through the RNIB. So like, now that feels like they're available on a wider scale. I think someone said on a TED talk I saw recently, like we wouldn't have electric toothbrushes if it wasn't for disabled people. Texting wouldn't be such a big thing if it hadn't been kind of a facility for deaf people to communicate. So actually, as disabled people, we've led to a lot of breakthroughs. And yeah, we are the future. Get with it, people.
Exactly. I really agree with you on that point. But yeah, I think there are so many things now that are just used sort of worldwide that were original, and so many people love, that were originally designed for disabled people, like
Yeah,
audiobooks. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Everyone, I don't know many people who don't love a good audiobook. Audiobooks are great.
yeah.
I love them. And obviously, they are great for visually impaired people. Also, like, yeah, electric toothbrushes. I was also taught, here's something I didn't know, on a podcast with Sir Robin Miller, who's an incredible record producer, who's also visually impaired, the Amazon Alexa, that was originally designed for blind and visually impaired people. And look how many people have one of them.
I didn't know that. See, that's amazing, isn't it? And now it's become an everyday sort of staple to the family home.
Yeah, like the Alexa is great. It's a really helpful tool. And I'm pretty sure it was originally designed to help, sort of visually impaired and disabled people out. And I'm
Mm,
I'm pretty sure most people have either Alexa or Google or some sort of smart device that you can talk to.
yeah. You'll have to put a warning before you put this podcast out now, Evie, for people to turn their devices off because those devices will start talking to people.
Fair point well made. Yeah, I am actually gonna have to do that. Oops. Oh well.
I only say
Yeah.
that because I made a show once where there was a character called Alexa, uh, and we did it online, and we had to tell the audience to make sure their devices were switched off because otherwise they would keep popping up during the performance.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to put a warning out for that now. And I've just dug that grave myself. But anyway, yeah, no, but I do
Knowledge,
think,
Evie. It was good knowledge.
yeah, but I do think, there are so many things that were just originally made for disabled people that most of the world use now. And if
Yeah,
that's not an example of disabled people being the future, then I really don't know what is.
yeah, completely.
So, could you tell me a little bit about your childhood and what it was like growing up with a disability?
Yeah, so I grew up in Gloucestershire, which is in the southwest of England. It's between Bristol and Birmingham, and I grew up in a place called Cheltenham. And for me, growing up, it felt okay. Uh, I say it felt okay. There were moments, of course, where my parents had to kind of fight for my right to an education, to be able to attend mainstream school. Um, Also, I didn't. The irony of where I am now is that I didn't have access to youth theatres. I was always a kid that was always performing, putting on shows for family, convincing my sister and my cousins that every family event should have a show attached to it that we should write or we should perform. But I couldn't. There were no youth theatres really that were like accepting of a young disabled person. My mum was met with the, oh, we can't take Nicola. The sessions aren't accessible. There's no lift, or I wouldn't know how to work with someone who uses a wheelchair. And that followed me through, to be fair, till I went to till doing university choices. That feeling of, oh, because you're a wheelchair user, you can't move in the same way as other people, don't know what access to the arts you're going to get. So yeah, I suppose I grew up. I grew up with not a lot of opportunity. Part of that is to do the area where I grew up, but also I think to do with that real lack of understanding at that time. I actually, it was at that time. I don't know, because I set up a theatre company in Gloucestershire called Toucan about 10 years ago. And we started off just doing work with young disabled people, 6 young disabled people. And we now have a youth theatre of over 50 young people who still face those barriers when they try to attend mainstream youth theatre. So it's still something that's very much apparent in the region, but also I think on a national level. So yeah, the kind of barriers I face as a young person, I've tried to remove those barriers for other young people. But yeah, for me growing up, it was, yeah, I'd say I didn't have access to a lot of opportunities that my non-disabled friends had. And also, that as a disabled young person, that um, it's hard, isn't it? Because you don't know what you can do until you see it. And I think for me, on TV, I saw people like Lisa Hammond, Francesca Martinez, Matt Fraser. So I was like, oh, I could be on TV. I could be a presenter. I could be an actor. And I think that's what created a spark in me of, there's something in this performing that I can do it. And that kind of never left me, even though I didn't have those opportunities to youth theatres as a child.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and this is something I've talked about with a few of my guests, about having role models, having
Yeah.
people who are out there doing the thing that you want to do. Especially, I think it's important when you're an adult too, but especially when you're a young kid, seeing people who are doing the thing that you really, really want to do, who are
Yeah.
like you, who, are similar to you, even if it's just someone who has a different disability to you, but still has a disability. It's like, if they can do it, why can't I? And I think that's
Mm.
one of the main reasons why it's so important to get disabled representation out there, so that people have a role model, like you said, with Francesco Martinez and Matt Fraser and people like that. You had people out there who you could look up to and go, they can do it, so can I.
Yeah, completely. And I think that was it is that because you don't know you can do it until you see it. Or you have people that have seen it and can guide you in that direction. And yeah, it's all of that. Is I think, yeah, role models, because you have those role models, it raises your aspirations. You can convince your parents or your carers or whoever to come with you on that journey. It kind of, and not just for us to see those people as role models, but for families and friends to see those disabled people as well in those roles widens their kind of thought on what a disabled person can achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. I really agree with you there. You've obviously mentioned that there was a lot of barriers you faced, especially when you were younger in like youth theatre groups and even university. I mean, how did that make you feel? Because I imagine that must have been very hard for you. Did you ever find it discouraging in a way?
Uh, yeah, and I'd probably say that that feeling of discouraging has never left me, because there's still certain things where you feel um, like for me as a theatre director and also a radio director, I can't get into every theatre in the country. Like that really still discourages me. Like, it is annoying because not all venues are wheelchair accessible, or the fact that there's a limited amount of wheelchair spaces per show. So I'm limited to what I can go and see and when I can see it. And I think growing up, like I really, although I had this thing of being a performer, I was going to go and be an educational psychologist. I was going to go and study psychology. And then I didn't fall. I chose drama as an A level. And that was what I really fell in love with. And from there, that thing of I want to go and be an actor, I want to be a performer. And then, having a really supportive drama teacher that then I think it really hit me when I was applying to university and drama schools of being, we're not accessible, or there's not a lot of opportunities for disabled actors. Why would you want to waste 3 years training? We don't know what work you get at the end of it. And then even to some university courses, oh, a movement teacher wouldn't know how to work with someone who uses a wheelchair. Therefore, you're going to have to change and do something like psychology. So I suppose it really impacted me on thinking, is this a right career move? But I had a supportive family that were like, no, come on, we can see what it means to you. And therefore, when I went to Glamorgan University to do theatre and media drama, it was a really supportive place for me. And that's where I really started to find my voice as a disabled person, as a disabled artist. I got introduced to kind of Grey Eye. And from there, I suppose my career kind of began. Many times I look back though, Evie, and think, what if I had done educational psychology? It would have been a very different life, I'm sure.
Yeah, I find those things so interesting, like to look back on certain things in your life where you probably had a choice between two things and then go, what if I'd have made the other choice?
Yeah.
What if I'd have done the other thing? Where would my life be? I always find things like that really interesting.
It's that sliding doors thing, isn't it? It's like, yeah,
Mm.
what that thing of writing your UCAS form at that moment, what made me go, no, actually, this isn't what I want to do. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things I talk about again with a lot of my guests, but one of the things I love to talk about because I really think it's important, and one of the things that you've brought up is the support of your family and your drama teacher and the people who believed in you enough to help you on that journey to, get to the career you've got now. I think having support around you is really, really important.
Yeah, definitely. And I think people to kind of um pick you up when you're down. And I think, not to take this to a depressing place, but I think sometimes as disabled people, we're constantly having to give everything 150% because we want to feel like we're able to do things. And therefore, we always have to feel like we have to do more, just to kind of, in a way, pass. if that makes sense. And I think it's really, you do need the support of your family there to be there to, I suppose to support you and to talk you back into, no, you are good enough, you can do this. And also, and I think it's brilliant you've got this podcast. Like, I would have loved this when I was a lot younger. So well done, Evie. I think this is brilliant because also there's something about a disabled community as well, and knowing that you're not on your own, that I have found really supportive throughout, throughout my late teens onwards, really. How are you finding it? Are you finding that community is helps push you?
I mean, first of all, I think it's brilliant that you have that community. I think especially if you have people who are similar to yourself, who it can really make you feel like you're not alone. And when you're struggling, that you have people who are going through the same things. I think I have definitely found a bit of a community. I have um, one of my really close friends from where I'm from is visually impaired, and she's lovely. And then last summer, very start of the summer holidays that's just gone, I went away to a sort of summer camp in the UK, which was at a school called New College Worcester, which is a school specially designed for blind and visually impaired students. And me going away to that 3-day summer camp not only gave me some a real boost in independence, it also allowed me to A, make some great memories, and B, make at least 6 or 7 really, really good friends of sort of
Mm.
varying but similar ages, who all have varying degrees of visual impairment. And so that's been amazing.
Yeah.
But I also have loved doing the podcast where I get to talk to some really, really incredible disabled people, mostly adults, but people who have done like yourself, people who've done some really amazing things and have so many different disabilities and have accomplished so many incredible things. It's really great for me to get to hear their stories as
Mm.
well.
Yeah. And thank you, Evie, for providing the platform for everyone to come and, share their stories as well.
Oh, not at all. I love it. I love that people just can come on here and sort of share their journey and it be released in such a lovely way
Yeah.
for everyone to listen to. I love it so much.
Great. No, well done.
Okay, so what has your journey and experiences in the arts industry been like?
It's been very varied. After uni, I worked as a stage manager for 2.5 years in Southampton. Uh, Touring, my work as a stage manager involved working in the theatre, but also driving a 3.5 ton van with 3 actors, touring schools, doing theatre and education shows, touring village halls. But after that, kind of feeling of being a stage manager, I still had this fire in my belly that I wanted to be a performer. And I was a performer for about 12 years and then slowly started to move into directing and then being a director probably for the last 8 years, which is where I feel I'm at now. I feel like I've gone through an entire journey to find out what my role is. And each of those has really led from one into the other. And it's, as a role as an actor, it's been really varied from, working with Grey Eye, to working in various regional theatres, to doing lots of voice work on radio, to now being a director working in different venues and also working in audio and radio. So I suppose the stage management and the actor is kind of like being a stepping stone to where I am now. And also along that way, being a part of the Paralympics opening ceremony in London 2012, which was like, the biggest moment of my career ever, where you're performing in front of a stadium audience of 70,000 people and then a worldwide audience of about 500 million. That, you know, which still feels like it's yesterday. You know, we've just marked 12 years since we had it in London, and it felt really quite emotional as you watch the opening in Paris, and then you're kind of like rethinking of what our opening ceremony was like, and kind of all the excitement of being part of that and representing the country and working with your disabled colleagues. Um, yeah, so yeah, that's my really varied journey into the arts. But now, you know, being a director, having worked with organisations such as Grey Eye and Dada and Kazoom and Toucan and other theatres, you know, around the country, that it's like I feel I feel like, yeah, this is what kind of 7 or 8 year old me putting on those plays at my grandparents' house or my parents' house family was kind of set out to achieve. You might not always know that as a 7 or 8 year old, that's where you're going to be, but like, you know, I wish I could go back and talk to that 7 or 8 year old and go, it's going to be bumpy, but this is where you're going to get to, and it'll be all right. And you know, and it's been a great I say it's been a great journey. There's moments where I go, oh, I wish the arts were more open to kind of the work that disabled artists make and the stories we want to tell. But there is a change. And also, I think as disabled artists, we've just got to, we have to just roll our sleeves up and kind of make the work we want to make, and hopefully allow the arts industry to catch up. Because, like we were saying at the beginning, we are the future.
Yes, absolutely. I completely agree with you there. You mentioned about sort of 7 or 8 year old you, and obviously having no idea at 7 or 8 where you would end up. I'm just gonna flash back to that. I know we've already sort of talked about your childhood, but I'm thinking, do you have any memories of sort of where your love of the arts began, or was it just kind of like a natural thing?
No, good question. Do you know where it started from? The film Annie, the original film Annie. I watched it. My mum took me to the cinema to watch it. This is giving my age away here, and I just instantly fell in love with it. And when I was in hospital as a kid, my dad bought me a Walkman, Sony Walkman, an old cassette player with headphones, and I literally worn out my cassette tape of Annie that he had to go and get a replacement cassette tape, and I would just sit, and that was my escape. I remember being in hospital for about 6 months when I was like 5, 6 years old, and playing Annie over and over again on repeat was my escape. And it's always that feeling of, you know, I suppose is there something related to the Annie story as a disabled person where you can feel isolated, and then suddenly you find your community and the place where you really want to be, that then leads to like a big musical explosion. I don't know, but like, yeah, Annie, that's all I'm saying. To the point where me and my sister would act it out in the lounge. She was always Molly, I was Annie. So yeah, for me, that's, I don't know why, but that's the driving force behind what's propelled me into the arts.
Oh, wow, that's amazing, and it's amazing that that film it's amazing all the sort of difficult times as a kid that that film and that soundtrack got you through, but it's amazing that that film has really propelled you into the career that you've now got.
Yeah, I think there's also a part of me that wants to be part of a massive musical number, and kind of tap dancing down steps that light up as I go. I don't know why, but maybe that's in my head somewhere, a dream. But yeah, what's got you into, like, are you into the arts? You into music? What was your driving force?
I yes, I love watching live theater. I love music. I definitely love music. Music, I think it was because I mean, my mum was always like from a very young age because mum didn't know I was going to be blind before
Mm-hmm.
I was born. So when I was it came as a shock, obviously. Like,
Yeah.
she's not expecting that.
Mm.
So then she was like, "Okay, well, how can I like I she's always told me that buying toys for me when I was a baby like was a bit more difficult because lots of toys, you look at the light, or you like,
Yeah,
or there
true.
are buttons that light up, and I didn't like loud noises, and a lot of toys involved that. So she had to put a lot of thought into buying toys for me. She also had to put a lot of thought into making sure that I still had the sensory feedback that any other child had.
Mm,
And a lot of that came with music. And so I think she did it before I was born as well, but we always had music on in the car and we still do to this day. It feels weird when we're just like in a car ride in silence.
yeah.
So we always had music on in the car. And I was a singer from a very young age, just for fun. Then came choir, then came playing the flute, then came orchestra. And musicals, I think the first musical I took, I remember taking a trip to London when I was about 6, maybe.
Hmm.
And we went to see the Railway Children, which was cool. But we also went to see the musical adaptation of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And that was one of my favorite movies at the time, even though I can't remember if it had audio description, but I love the movie. And the musical adaptation, it was really cool. And then ever since then, sort of every couple of years, we love going to London and seeing musicals and stuff like that. So I
Yeah,
think it's a bit of natural progression.
nice. Yeah, and it's funny, isn't it? Those things that have been influenced from our childhood, how they continue to play that part in our lives, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you think about it, I mean, your childhood is the foundation of, like, if you picture sort of life as like a big like tower of, or like a big Lego structure, your childhood is like the base layers of that,
Yeah.
your childhood is sort of the thing that holds everything together,
Hmm.
because the childhood is the very start of your life, and the part of your life, I think, especially as a really young kid, because I'm still technically a child, but I think it's as a really young kid where you learn so many like valuable life lessons.
Yeah. Yeah, completely. It is. It's the foundations of who you are, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, yeah, childhood is just such an important part of your life, I think, and
Hmm.
you make so many memories throughout your childhood.
Yeah, definitely.
So you've mentioned that you really enjoy working as a director, and that's kind of where you see yourself being. I know that you have definitely worked as a freelance director. So can you tell me a bit about that?
Yeah, so freelance directing means that I go around working different places, different organizations, working on different projects. And that's something I really love, get to be creative. So that can be from making work in drama schools, it can be working with a writer, create a new piece of writing, and it can be, I do a lot of working in kind of circus and outdoor arts as well, making work for that, making work for young audiences, working on kind of a process of what we call research and development on new script ideas, working with writers on how they can develop that. I also work as a dramaturg, which means that you're somebody that helps writers look at the story, how it comes together. And that was the role that I had on The Little Big Things, which opened in the West End last year, which you've had Ed Larkin on, haven't you? And you had
Mhm.
Amy Trigger on, which they were part of. So yeah, my it can be, as a freelance director, your role is really varied. I've also recently been working a lot with Polly Thomas and Thomas Carter projects on some drama for Radio 4. So it can, yeah, it's really varied. And I've started making some short films with my friend Shirley Houston, who you might know from Triple C and Dank. So yeah, it's it's yeah. Well, how do I sum up freelance directing? I think it's very varied. You never know day to day what you're going to be doing. And it's also really exciting to work in with different artists, different buildings, different venues, and different kind of demographics of audiences as well. Um, and my work can be so varied. Um, from leading a workshop to, yeah, making a piece of circus, who knows. But I think at the core of it, it's always about telling stories, isn't it? Is like what stories we tell and how we tell them and who we're telling those stories for.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, your job really does sound varied, which I think is really cool. I mean, do you like that? Do you like how sort of varied it is, how you never really know what you're going to be doing from day to day? Is that something you like?
Sometimes. Sometimes it can be really daunting of like, oh no, am I going to get paid this month? Have I got any jobs coming in? But I think, that's where actually, if you work in the arts, I'm not just a director, I'm a workshop facilitator, I'm a teacher, I'm an acting coach, I'm a dramaturg. Like you wear so many different hats to enable you to kind of, make a career from it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really does sound incredible. You've kind of sort of mentioned, I mean, you've worked on so many incredible projects. For example, The Little Big Things, which yet we've had the incredible Ed Larkin on the podcast, and also the amazing Henry Fraser, who the story is based off.
Yeah.
Um, but you've worked on some really incredible projects. I mean, do you have any favorites? And if so, can you tell me about them and the roles that you played in making them come to life?
Well, thank you, Evie. Thank you for saying of having wonderful projects. I don't think I can pick a favorite. I was thinking about this and I was like, I don't think I have a favorite because I get so much from them all in different ways. I think the incredible thing about the Little Big Things is I was part of that process for 4 years on that production, working closely with Joe, the writer, and Nick and Tom on what the lyrics could be, what we wanted that piece to look at, what it could represent, the idea of having two people playing Henry, what that meant, what that could look like. But I think, the moment for me was that first. I mean, it was such a beautiful group of people telling that story. The cast, the creatives, everyone involved, and being in that venue in the West End, an accessible venue, which really felt really like groundbreaking. I mean, it was 2023, but yeah, groundbreaking for the West End. Um, but that moment where we did the first show, our first preview, as they call it, for an audience, a paying audience, and Henry and his family were in that audience. And the moment in the show where Henry's paintings float down, and that got a massive applause, like it was just like I've got goosebumps talking about it now, but that was just incredible because we had the person there whose story we were telling. Like I also felt really nervous of, oh my goodness, what if they hate it? What if they hate how they've been portrayed? But seeing their reactions was like, that's a proper moment that will always live with me. Um, and then, like mentioned earlier, the Paralympics, being part of that, flying through the stadium with my late friend Dave Toole, and just hearing that audience give us such a great response was just phenomenal. And but then also, I also love other little moments when I'm working with young disabled people and see them flourish through kind of drama sessions and putting on work that they've written, is also fantastic. Or a show that I made in Manchester called The Forest of Forgotten Discos with the brilliant late writer Jackie Hagan. And I remember there was one moment where we had people doing some of the characters. We had a deaf character in it, and some of the actors did sign supported English. Um, and so we were making it sort of accessible as we could for some deaf audiences. And we had a deaf mum and her hearing son come to watch it, and she just came up to us at the end and was saying how much she loved it because we'd integrated access. It meant that her and her son could have a shared experience, whereas usually they'd go to a show and there's no sign language interpretation, so she wouldn't know what's going on. But with this show, they could have that shared experience, and that meant a lot, because it was like, that's what we tell stories for. That's what theatre is all about, is shared experiences, a place where we can have kind of conversations. We can help each other to understand the world a little bit more. So yeah, I think every little project I do, it always means a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I can completely understand that. So, what would you say then are some of the benefits of having people with disabilities working in the arts industry?
Good question. I think the benefits definitely are um, getting our stories out there, pushing our disabled narratives, and actually we are the ones to tell those stories, so that we don't become kind of, we don't fall into that category of always being seen as inspirational, or being kind of seen as freakish, dare I say it, that actually we start to tell those stories about our lives, how we want to tell them. Also, as we were talking about earlier, um, creating more role models, whether that is on TV, on film, or even like producers, technicians. Like, it's creating exposure to those career options that we might not know about. Um, I think it's just, and also it's around, being part of these kind of stories and questions about what is this world, and also to show that arts arts can be a career for disabled people. Like, when I was growing up, or it always felt a little bit like you did stuff, you did theatre stuff, or you did music because that was therapy for you as a disabled person. And I say that a bit tongue in cheek. And yes, it can be, but also there is a place for us to have a career in it, to go bold, to tell our stories, to be seen kind of center stage, and to also, like, you know, challenge those preconceptions around disability, and also just to make really good work, and and to have a creative outlet. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are just so many benefits to it, aren't there? And there are so many things that disabled people can bring to the table.
Yeah, definitely. I think so, and I think it's like having the opportunity to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned kind of in one of your previous answers about sort of telling stories and bringing those stories to life through theatre. So, what are some of your favourite types of stories to see told on stage?
That's a really good question. Uh, I love a good sort of under underdog does good type story. Where it's always the person that you don't expect is going to achieve something, suddenly, like, they go on a journey and self-discovery, and then they knock it out the park. I suppose that probably comes from that Annie being so rooted in everything I do. I love those stories that like feel like they've got a bit of hope and community to them. And dare I say this, but I hated musicals. Uh, but then, having worked on the little big things, I've seen the joy a musical can bring to audiences. So I think there's something in, I don't love all musicals. I've realised this, Evie, that I have to have musicals that then isn't all singing. So that there
Mhm.
are places where there feels like there's a little bit of acting, there's scenes, there's dialogue, and then we can go into a song. Um, so yeah, I think it's those, yeah, the stories of the underdog does good. And I suppose another influence for me growing up was the film The Goonies as well, which is all about that group of outsiders that become the heroes of their own story. What stories do
Yeah.
you like?
I Oh my gosh, that's such a good question, and one that
You
I have
asked the
actually
question, it's your question. That's why it's a good question.
well, I mean, it's it's something I've never really thought about, and I'm only starting to come to terms with now.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm trying to think about I kind of do agree with you actually about those sort of like stories about possibly people who are outsiders, or people who are not necessarily in the sort of popular circle per se, who end
Hmm.
up being your sort of main hero of the story. I mean, I'm trying to think of stories that I read a lot as a kid, and the one that comes to my mind is the Harry Potter series. That was
Mm-hmm.
like my childhood. Like you with Annie is me with Harry Potter.
Okay.
Like it's kind of it's been such a big part of my childhood, and I think there are elements of that I think is sort of maybe sort of the main characters being on the outside a little bit more, but
Yeah.
ending up being obviously the more, kind of heroes of the story.
Hmm. Do you think that's a reflection on how we see ourselves and where we want to be?
Maybe that's a very good point. Maybe maybe it is. Maybe we know kind of deep down that we are on the outside a little bit, but see, we want to be that sort of hero in a way who can change things and do good.
Yeah. I wonder if it is about that sort of, we are kind of, the way that society does place these barriers. We're automatically on the outside of something. And actually there is about, like, yeah, like you say, going on a journey to change that. Or there's something of us being that future, and forging that change so that, next generations come in, don't have as many barriers as us, or I don't know.
Maybe it's a very good point to bring up, actually. Yeah, I that's something I'll definitely have to think about.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So, what would you say then has been your proudest moment so far?
Career wise or just generally?
Whatever you want it to be.
Okay. Uh, Proudest moment I so far. I think career wise, it probably is being part of that Paralympics opening ceremony. But then I go, no, there's also something about other projects. But no, that for me felt big. But then also, like, on a personal level, becoming an auntie, being there when my niece was born, without sounding too soppy. But that was one of the proudest things for me. Uh, I suppose it's something about welcoming a new life into the world, isn't it? Which I suppose is what you do when you make a play. You're giving birth to something, you're bringing a story into the world, apparently. So maybe the two things exist side by side. Um, but yeah, yeah, and also setting up Toucan and seeing those young people thrive. Um, and I suppose, having worked on little big things of just going, it's those little things that mean the big things. So we should never just take things for granted. We can be proud of, finding those achievements that we do day by day, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I really couldn't agree with you more that I mean, yeah, I mean, Paralympics, that is just like I mean, I want to circle back to that because it sounds like the most amazing thing to be a part of, and I completely understand why that would be one of your proudest moments. I mean, it sounds amazing.
Yeah, it was. And it was, I only got the part of the main character like a month before. I was in it initially as a wheelchair dancer and then got asked to audition. So it all happened incredibly fast for me, of like then learning how to safely fly in a harness, how to be taken up to like over 25 to 30 meters high. Like, yeah, to then, having that intense kind of rehearsal period, to then being part of it on that night, and hearing that audience, and then like the next day seeing it all over the headlines for the newspapers about how wonderful it was, and and I suppose the impact that we made on kind of the preconceptions of disabled people around the world, that definitely is something to kind of feel proud to have been part of. Um, it's not every day you get to dance on stage with Sir Ian McKellen, and there was Stephen Hawking as well, and you know, and 4,000 people that were part of that kind of volunteer cast and professional cast, and yeah, to celebrate being disabled was like it was a big party, and it was mega.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It totally sounds it. So what would you say then are some of your goals and aspirations for the future?
Good question. My goals are to keep being creative, whatever that means, in whatever way. And I suppose these goals kind of fit in with aspirations, maybe. My aspiration, I'd love to make a massive West End show. So we'll see if that happens. I'm putting it out there into the universe, into the ether. Um, and just to be creative and to be happy at the moment, that feels like my goals. And to I want to travel the world a little bit more. This is like, if I win the lottery, um I have a camper van and go traveling. But yeah, I think to be creative, to be happy, and to enable people to thrive are mine. What are yours? Do you have goals and aspirations?
Well, first of all, they sound like incredible goals and aspirations. And oh my gosh, I could totally see you creating a massive, really successful West End musical. At this
Thank
point,
you.
I'm just looking forward to seeing what you do. But I want to. I guess my dream career would just be to do this, to be a podcaster or a
Yeah.
presenter or a journalist, but just to get to keep talking to really, really incredible, amazing people. And I guess that would be my dream. But at the minute, it's funny you ask because lately I've been thinking about what I do want to do. For
Mm,
ages, it's just been, I want to be a podcaster. And I do. That's what I want. But then I'm thinking about what else is out there for me to do. Like,
mm,
I've always enjoyed acting. It's never something I've really been confident in doing, but could I try that? Or I've
yeah.
had this dream from when I was a really, really young kid that's never really gone away to maybe be a teacher. So
Mm-hmm.
it's funny you ask because lately I've been having what I can only describe as a sort of epiphany. But I guess in answer to your question, I don't know. But if I could do something like this, I guess that would be the dream.
Great. And I'd say on that, and I remember, like you, I think it was that time where it's like having, choosing your GCSEs to then what A levels you could do. You have to think about it so young about what your career is going to be. Of like, I remember a science technician at school just saying to me, just make sure you do something that makes you happy because you're going to have to do it for every day of your life. And I think that's the thing is like, and I know those things can change of what that happiness is, but I think that is the thing you need to, yeah, follow your heart on what that could be. And if that is making podcasts, being a journalist, having a go at acting, I think just know that there are ways and means that you can do it. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, thank you. I mean, I'm just like, I'm going to do my A levels and then I'm just going to see where things go, I think is the
yeah,
plan.
good plan. Good plan, Evie. That sounds amazing. Yeah.
Thanks. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I mean, you're just so incredible. Like, you're such an amazing, incredible person. I mean, you've done so much. You've had so many roles, you've accomplished so many things, you've worked on so many projects, and you're just an all-round really wonderful person. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been a real privilege to get to meet you and to get to talk to you.
Oh, thank you, Evie. Yeah, no, thank you very much for inviting me, and it's great that you're doing it. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. And thank you to my audience for listening, and I will see you all next time.